So you accepted an offer on your property. Now what? Once all the initial terms and conditions of an offer from a buyer have been accepted and agreed upon by both the buyer and the seller, you open escrow. This means the purchase agreement and all the additional documents are sent to the escrow company. Getting to this stage in the transaction and accepting an offer isn't just about the price. In order to open escrow, all the terms and conditions need to be agreed upon, and there's a lot. So just as a quick review, this includes the details such as when will escrow close? How long does a buyer have for inspections or an appraisal? How long does a buyer have for a full loan approval, for example? What kind of city inspections are agreed upon and who's going to pay for them? If this is a condo or a townhouse, what are the expectations around the homeowners association and the documents and their financials? The escrow company is a neutral party in the transaction, meaning that they don't represent either side. So the documents are submitted to escrow, and then they write up and monitor the agreed upon and contractually binding details of the sale in what is called escrow instructions. It is my job and responsibility as the realtor to monitor all these timelines and agreed upon terms. I do this for my client during a transaction. In addition to keeping you as a client updated, we need to be in close communication with all the other parties that are necessary to get to a close. This includes title companies, escrow, inspectors, lenders, the other agent. To miss a deadline or not follow through on these details in the contract does not best represent you as the client, and we as agents have a fiduciary duty to protect your best interests. This is required from the very beginning to the end of the transaction. Now, if I'm representing the seller, I have no obligation to protect or represent the buyer in any capacity. That's their agent's job. Or, on the flip side, if I'm representing the buyer, then I'm negotiating on their behalf and protecting their best interest. Strong negotiations on their behalf and meeting deadlines by doing our due diligence is the best way to make this happen. Okay, so getting back to the basic steps, what happens once we're in escrow? Much of these steps happen simultaneously. So earnest money from the buyer to secure the buyer's offer in escrow is due within 72 hours of acceptance. Seller's disclosures. The seller is required to provide disclosures on the property. This gives the seller an opportunity to share with the buyers everything they know about the home. Were there upgrades? What's being transferred with the property? Were repairs done? Have there been any insurance claims? This is always a big question. The more transparent, the better. As a seller, it is best to reveal everything that is known about the property. And that protects you because you have told everybody what you know. The next step is inspections. Inspections are represented during any real estate transaction. The purpose of a physical inspection is for the buyer to ascertain that the property meets their expectations, not for an opportunity to renegotiate the price. However, it may be another point of negotiation in the transaction. A physical inspection is usually the first step, but if further investigations are recommended, then the buyer, during the designated time frame, has the option to bring in further experts for inspections. So that could be a plumber, an electrician, a termite guy, a roofer. Any of the experts in the field may be called in to provide more information. The next step is appraisal. When escrow is opened, the lender is notified and an appraisal is ordered. A good listing agent will be prepared to share their details and the value of the property with the appraiser because they're really well versed in the amenities. The appraisal could also be a point of negotiation on behalf of the client. So we need to keep that in mind. At the same time, all of the above is happening, the agent will work with a title company that pulls a report confirming that the title is clean and there's no liens on the property or any issues. If issues are revealed, we're going to work to resolve them and to confirm that there's a clean title prior to the close. Escrow instructions, here we go again. Just like we talked about earlier, it's a write-up and it's distributed to both the buyer and to the seller. The instructions are a reiteration of the agreed upon terms and conditions from the purchase agreement. They need to be reviewed in detail to confirm that the terms as agreed upon are acceptable and written up correctly. Then they need to be signed and returned. The seller has a few more steps to this process, and we can walk you through that when we get to that time. We also order what's called a natural hazard disclosure report. This report will notify a buyer that they're in, for example, a flood zone, an earthquake zone. By the way, there's earthquakes in California, so that comes up. Is there oil drilling near or under the property? And there's so much more. This is really important to know all of these details and happenings both around the property, on the property, and in the neighborhoods. City inspections are also required in certain parts of town, and a well-versed agent knows which ones and knows who to call to make that happen. If it's a condo or a townhouse that's being sold, we work with the Homeowners Association to get their rules, their regulations. They're called CC&Rs, get their financials. As we've met with the above deadlines, contingencies are signed off on accordingly. We're getting closer to the end of the transaction. The lender will then confirm that all the conditions are signed off and usually does a recheck on the buyer prior to funding. This is why, as a buyer, you don't want to make any large purchases during escrow. I had one family buy all their new appliances and furniture during escrow. They were waiting for the delivery. The purchases were so much that it tipped the scale so far on their debt-to-income ratio, and it threw off the deal. Needless to say, we had to make some adjustments accordingly, but we eventually got it done and back on track and got it closed. Sometimes learning experiences can be a little painful, and in that situation it was, but as I said, we got it closed. A closing disclosure is then issued. This itemizes the expenses and it needs to be reviewed in detail as well. Assuming all is good, the buyer then sends in the balance of their down payment to include their closing cost. It's important to account for the closing cost. The lender then funds their share and the title is then transferred from the sellers to the buyers for a close of a successful escrow and keys are exchanged. Now, this is just a summary of the overall happenings. So many details go into each and every transaction, and the attention to detail is what really makes a sale a success. A seasoned agent just gets it all handled with as much finesse as possible because we know that selling or buying a home is a very stressful time, and we want to make it as seamless as possible. As a seasoned agent, I align myself with a team that checks all the boxes, crosses the T's, dots the I's. You as the client should be the primary concern, and when the seller hands over the keys so that they can move over to their next great adventure, we want to be looked back as a positive experience. My team and I work really hard to make that happen. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please don't hesitate to connect with me on any real estate related issues, and I'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe to the Crystal Glenning channel and make it a great day.